Welcome to the 2021 Hydrant Inspection Program for the Stamford Fire Department. For the safety and protection of the residents, our department members, and the operational aspects of our profession, this year we will kick off with a more in-depth inspection for the first round. Every stem will be turned and every hydrant will flow water in a controlled manner. Our goals and objectives will be: inspect hydrants for several common issues, gather and record this data, a pressure and flow test, and pump the hydrants as necessary. This will allow us to obtain comprehensive data that will be analyzed to perform necessary repairs and create a more reliable fire protection system. The data collection point remains through the fire web. This is accessible while you are on your inspection routes. Simply log in, go to the Mechanical tab, and scroll down to Hydrant Inspections. Here, you can narrow your assigned hydrants by station and group. You will see new items and instructions on the inspection form, which will help us identify several issues we can have with hydrants. Let's first review what type of hydrants we have out there. The Kennedy is one of our most common hydrants and comes in different models. This is a K11 and has a screw-type collar and will have detailed info on the make, model, and year. The newer Kennedy 81A has a breakaway collar that bolts the hydrant to the riser. We also have RD Wood or Matthews fire hydrants. These are easily identifiable by the ribbed bonnet. These are some of our oldest fire hydrants and info is limited on them. There are a few other hydrants that don't fit the pre-mentioned criteria. Some were also issued adapters to conform with our Stamford hydrant thread size. If there is any doubt on thread size, carefully test fit with your apparatus hydrant adapter and report any issues. To begin the inspection form, enter as much information as you can about the hydrant. The condition found will be defined after we perform a pressure test, which we will cover later. So what are we looking for? Some immediate concerns will be damaged hydrants, unstable hydrants, or collar damage to hydrants. These hydrants should not be turned on and immediately reported as out of service and a red ring placed on the hydrant. It is the policy of the Stamford Fire Department and the district unit's responsibility to place a red ring on the hydrant. If red rings are needed, they can be acquired at the mechanical shop. Large rings will easily fit behind the large cap of a threaded steamer. For the store's hydrant, you may need to slice the ring to fit it behind the store's connection. We also have smaller rings for the 2.5 ears. Use one on each side if you have to go this route. Having more rings visible has already shown to help for everyday out-of-service knowledge or incident-specific emergencies. If you must identify a hydrant as out of service in this manner, please return with a red ring as soon as possible. In the heat of the moment, uniformity helps identify the issue clearly. To take a hydrant out of service, the officer in charge will change the status of the hydrant in the FireWeb portal by going back to the Mechanical tab to Citywide Hydrants. In the search criteria, enter the hydrant number and click Submit to go specifically to this hydrant. For that hydrant, click Add History. Scroll down the page to the Choose Category menu and choose Out of Service Hydrant Damage. Write in the notes the damaged issue and that the hydrant has been red ringed. Then click Save and return to the inspection platform. This will generate the appropriate email notifications about the hydrant to the Deputy Chiefs, Fire Supervisor, and our Hydrant Division to begin the repair process. There is no need for phone notification. Spun hydrants with significant collar damage shall be taken out of service immediately. Spun hydrants with minor damage can remain in service as long as all bolts are in place around the collar. However, a service needed report must be submitted. This process can also be accomplished through the same manner as taking the hydrant out of service. However, this time choose the option of service needed and enter the problem into the notes. Service needed reports can also be made for items such as this broken dust collar. Leaking hydrants can be checked first to see if they are completely shut off. If it appears they will not stop leaking, no further inspection is needed. A red ring shall be placed on the hydrant and the officer shall place it out of service in the hydrant app. Aquarian will have to respond out and turn off the hydrant at the street valve key. GPS coordinates. This helps us all know exactly where the fire hydrant is when responding to incidents. If it appears the pin does not match the location of the hydrant, check the appropriate box on the inspection form. We will go out and update these coordinates so CAD, the MDT, and tablet command can show their proper location. Is a gate valve visible? Many have been paved over through the years, and this will help us expedite repairs. Is there a flag installed? Some companies are equipped with tools to fix or install a new flag. If you are able to install a flag correctly, please do. If not, check the appropriate box. In the past, hydrants that were damaged were fixed using inserts. A smaller barrel is inserted into the existing barrel. This results in less water. It is now our policy not to use inserts anymore. However, we would like to know how many Kennedy inserts are out there. A Kennedy insert may or may not clearly look like an insert at the base. However, it is obviously narrower than a standard Kennedy and will be stamped on the back with a 4.5. Please mark appropriately. Check the base ring to see if the hydrant is or ever was painted red. Some hydrants located in high groundwater areas were purposely plugged and the rings were painted red to indicate that the hydrant must be pumped after each and every use. Unfortunately, over time, this system is no longer accurate because red rings were painted over or repainted red incorrectly. This year we will attempt to positively identify our plugged hydrants during our pressure test and mark them correctly. We will also review how to identify a plugged hydrant versus a wet hydrant shortly. If a hydrant is found to be too low to the ground, please check the appropriate box. Our goal is to add extension rings to these hydrants to make them more user-friendly. If you come across hydrants buried in brush or are hard to see from the road, please check the box and also email a picture to sfd.hydrants@stanfordct.gov so we can contact the appropriate party to be sure hydrants are not obstructed. Hydrants should have a minimum of a 3-foot radius around all sides of the hydrant and be clear of private property fences, walls, poles, or any other vertical obstructions that could inhibit the use of the hydrant. Please do what you can to continue the inspection and we will take the appropriate action. If the hydrant is not painted in our standard yellow, is in need of a general paint job, or if the hydrant has a blue bonnet, check the appropriate box. We want to ensure only properly marked hydrants are used by approved agencies. For your information, you may come across blue rings on a hydrant. These hydrants are still in service, but Aquarian has placed a blue ring on it to notify potential unauthorized third-party users that this is for fire department use only. Continue with the hydrant inspection as normal. Check the hydrant number written on the side of the hydrant. If there is a conflicting hydrant number, please enter that number on the hydrant form. All companies will be supplied with markers to clearly overwrite numbers to make them legible again. Keep numbers written on the side near the large steamer. We would like our city property to look as neat as possible. Check the caps for gaskets and the condition of the threads. If the threads, also known as nozzles, appear damaged in any way, please report appropriately on how it will affect the safe use of the hydrant. Nozzles should be secure and not loose within the hydrant. We are trying to equip companies with grease. If you have grease, please apply as necessary and check the appropriate box for grease added or grease needed. The use for magnetic hydrant wrenches does not appear to be a concern as it was in the past. There should only be a small handful of these left in the city, and we are considering changing them out for regular operating nuts. Check the box if you find one. Now to the stem and pressure testing we will be doing this year. We want to ensure every stem is in operation and every hydrant can flow an adequate amount of water. There are more in-depth ways to conduct flow tests on hydrants, and Aquarian does perform these tests around the city for more accurate GPM data. However, to protect personal property and gain a general idea of how the specific hydrant flows and operates, our test will help us determine if there are issues with the hydrant or valves below the surface. Let's start by stating, for this inspection, we will not flush hydrants by operating the hydrant wide open. Aquarian is finishing up a citywide flush of the system. The flow tests we will be doing will consist of flowing water in a more controlled manner. However, we will perform a burp and soft flow test of the hydrant. The burp will discharge any sediment from the hydrant before we send it through our equipment. This will also give us a good indication of how our stem will operate. For this test, remove all caps and place them aside. This will also be a good time to inspect the gaskets and threads. Then, slowly open the hydrant until a soft, steady flow of water discharges from all sides. Allow the water to clear, and then you can shut the hydrant down. If no water was produced after 6 or 7 turns, please check the appropriate box in the inspection form. If at any time debris is found coming from a hydrant, please save it and notify sfd.hydrants@stanfordct.gov. What you will need for the pressure test is the high-rise pressure gauge, bell reducer, TFT 1.5" trash line nozzle, and a hydrant wrench. Please do not use any other nozzle than the TFT as we are taking calculations based on this specific nozzle. When we open hydrants fully, it is important to open the hydrant very slowly until all the way open. One full turn with a little pause, then moving on to another turn, pause, etc. This will help prevent any pressure drops in the system that could set off nearby flow switches in buildings or activate aquarium pump systems which may generate water hammers. To begin the flow test, set the equipment on the hydrant facing a direction that best suits to not cause any damage to our citizens' personal property. If you need to redirect water streams to protect property, please utilize options such as the elbow in the high-rise bag. With the nozzle bail wide open and on fog, turn the hydrant on and observe the flow while also counting the number of turns. Once the hydrant is fully open, mark the number of turns it took to fully open on the inspection form. Take notice of the flow while opening the hydrant. If the nozzle pressure appears to fluctuate up and down while opening, this will indicate to us a valve seat issue on a compromised hydrant that we must attend to. When the hydrant becomes fully open, allow the pressure gauge to settle out to a reading. Check the reading on the gauge and mark this number on the inspection form as your residual pressure. Then, slowly close the bail on the nozzle, and when the gauge settles out again, you may now take a static pressure reading off the gauge. These numbers will allow us to make estimates on gallonage for this hydrant. You will likely only see a small change from residual to static pressure. If there are huge drops in residual pressure, this will indicate to us potential flow-restricted issues underground that we must look further into. As you close the hydrant, you will see the pressure gauge fall to zero. This will indicate pressure is falling into the hydrant and the bottom drains are working. You can then reopen the bail on the nozzle and you may hear air rush into the hydrant. As you can see, the bottom drains are small. Give the hydrant a couple minutes to settle out while you pack up your equipment and before we finalize the inspection. We can first easily determine if we may be dealing with a potential plugged hydrant. The water level will remain standing and equal to the lowest port on the hydrant. Mark this situation appropriately as failed to drain after flow test and wet as condition found after flow test, and pump the hydrant dry. We need to continue with inspections 2 and 3 before confirming we have just a plugged hydrant. If water is not visible after a couple of minutes, check for any remaining water in the barrel and pump out as necessary. As a reminder, do not throw weights into the barrel of the hydrant. This can cause the string to wrap around the stem, locking the nuts onto the stem. This will not only cause us to have to take the hydrant out of service, which you must report, it creates unnecessary cost and repairs. If it is left inside the barrel and the nuts bypass an intake screen on the fire pump, we can cause thousands in damage to fire apparatus. Also, by lowering the string and nuts slow until it hits the bottom, you can also gauge how much water remains in the barrel as you pull the string out. You can write your findings in the notes for the hydrant, which you will be able to see when you return on your next inspection. At this point, if it appears there is still water lower in the barrel, record the hydrant as wet. Since some water did drain, failed to drain is not appropriate, as again that indicates a potential plugged hydrant. You must then pump the remaining water out using your hydrant pump. If the string is not wet or just shows some residual dampness, record the hydrant as dry on the inspection report. These differences between failed to drain, wet, or dry will help us diagnose which hydrants have valve leaking issues and which ones don't. You can now cap up the hydrant and close out your first inspection for the season. Inspection follow-ups 2 and 3 will only concentrate on those hydrants which were wet. To help us find leaking hydrants, please space out your inspections to allow time for slow leaking hydrants to fill the barrel some. This will help us accurately track them and make necessary repairs. If the water was still found after the third inspection, please be sure it gets marked as wet. We are exploring options to help prevent frozen hydrants this year. This year's test will help us find potential unsatisfactory hydrants or problem areas within the city. This will allow us to work towards resolving these issues or pre-plan around them for better protection of life, property, and the safety of our crew members. Good luck and be safe.